In this lesson, we're going to grab our interface comp and position it in such a way that it looks like it's actually laying on the table. Okay, so we're just right here inside of that main phone footage comp, and if it's helpful to you to rename this, I would definitely recommend that. So let's just come over here to where that phone composition is sitting, and we'll go ahead and just rename that to main integrated comp. And that's just going to kind of just show us that that's the very top level, and as we pre-compose things, it'll still sit inside of that folder. And I always like to put that in all caps just because it makes it easier to find once I get a ton of comps. So we'll go ahead and grab that one and just put it in the comps folder, and now we're ready to just kind of start working with the rest of this. So let's go ahead and go into that comps folder and grab the interface and just drag that onto our timeline. Now it's just going to sit right on top of everything, and you can see that this is sitting at a shorter value than what we are going to be using for the length of our whole footage. So we may need to go in there and extend that a little bit, and I don't want to just stretch it because all of the things that are going to be going on inside of here will be timed in a way that we want that time to be able to reflect on the outside as well. So this is taking just a moment to update so we're able to see all of the pieces. This is also a very large piece as well. So if I kind of zoom out, you can see that that was that old size of 1920 by 1080. So what I want to do is turn down my resolution a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and turn that down to 1/4. And if you want to, you could even make sure that that adaptive resolution is on if you're working in CS6, which if you're using our project files, you probably need to be doing that. So I'm going to just turn off the eyeball for that for a moment. And really, we probably will not actually need that interface until he starts pushing the buttons and has the phone set down, but that seems to happen pretty early on. So let's just go ahead and come in here and extend the length of that interface. So the number of frames that we have in our main comp here for our phone footage is going to be, let's just control click over here, 1176. So we know that that's what the interface duration needs to be. So we'll go ahead and double click inside of here, and we'll go up to composition settings and just go ahead and turn that duration to 1176. Then we can say okay to that, and that gives us that extra bit of time we need at the end. Now you'll want to come in here and select all of your layers. And just to start out with, I just kind of like to do it this way just to make sure I have enough length, and we'll extend it. We may not need them to be that long, but you never can be too careful, really. So now that we have that fixed, let's just come back out to our main integrated comp. We can extend that out. Now you can see that those are the same layer length, and we'll go ahead and begin to place this. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my 3D switch for that layer. And we'll back up just a little bit here. And let's just click back here somewhere in the middle so that this is visible. And it looks like we are going to have a little bit of trouble placing this because of that background layer that's inside of here. So let's just go ahead, come down in here, and go to the bottom of those layers. And it's probably going to be this very bottom one there. So now we have that transparent background, and you can toggle that on just to make sure if you want to, but it's going to be transparent either way in this main level. So now we can see the footage through the transparency. So let's go ahead and just start positioning this. I'm just going to push this down in Z space a little bit, and you may want to just try to get it the right scale first of all, and that's going to be easy to tell based on the size of this frame and the size of the phone. So if you get those pretty close just by pushing this back in Z space, that's going to be just a little bit easier to deal with. Now I would recommend getting this smaller like this with your Z space, with your positioning instead of your scale, simply because you'll have to change the positioning somewhat, and I like having all my information on one property if it's possible. So Not going to mess with the scale. We'll just do it with the positioning. And since we have to have it as a 3D object anyway, just to get that rotation correct in a minute, you'll just have a little bit better time doing it all through the position data. So let's go ahead now that we're getting that kind of close and start kind of rotating this around. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the rotation tool, and we can just rotate that all the way around just like that, and just kind of see where that is. That's looking pretty good. If you want to toggle this down and just go into your transform options, that might help you just to get a little bit more accurate. So probably this needs to go down just a bit, just to turn that back the other direction. And let's just try something like 240, just to get it going a little faster there. So that's looking pretty good. We're getting a pretty straight line here. And we want to line that up perfectly so that the line next to the phone and then the line of the frame are the same. So maybe just a little bit less than 240. Let's try something like 239. And you have to be a little bit more careful when you're doing rotation increments than position, because rotation is going to be in degrees and position is in pixels. So you're always going to get a larger change even with just a one number change like that. So if we even do just something like 238, you can see that that really creates a pretty significant change in comparison to doing a one number change in pixels. So now let's go ahead and rotate this on the other axis, on that Y axis, to get it to look a little bit more flat against the table. So the Y axis is going to be right here. So let's just go ahead and start turning that a little bit. Now that doesn't look quite right, so let's just undo that. Maybe we might have a little more light coming in here and just rotating it on the Y itself. And you can see that the reason why that's happening is because we've moved that in Z space and changed that Z orientation. If we only change one property at a time, then it's going to really drastically change that. But if you drag the handles, you can see that all three of those orientation properties are changing. So then it really becomes just kind of a game of you getting all three of those parameters to coincide with each other perfectly. So let's just go ahead and put in a few values down here. I know that I need this value right there to change pretty significantly. So it's just kind of going to tilt down a little bit right there. This one will get a little bit closer on this back corner here. And then we can bring this one, just kind of tilted that around right like that. So you will probably have to play around with it a little bit on your own just to make sure that you're getting those settings just right for you. But I can see that I have a pretty good looking edge right here. That feels like it's in the right place. It's really sticking, but this phone still feels like it's not in the frame really at all. So we have our orientation right, but our position is still a little bit wrong. So we need to go ahead and push this down probably a little bit further. So let's just try something like 2700. And you can see that that pushed that down in Z space just a little bit more. And then we can just go ahead and start using our arrow keys. So I'm just going to select the whole layer and we can just arrow this over. I'm just using that left arrow key to move that into position. And we may still need to do just a little bit more rotation just to get that phone in that frame like we want it to be. And we may need to just grab that X handle and drag down, because I can't manipulate just one of those properties since the way the orientation has been manipulated. So it really is just a little bit tricky to get that perfect. Okay, so that size looks great, but we still have just a little bit of a crooked rotation there. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here and we're going to turn this back up to full so we can really see what we're working with and really see that contrast. And then we probably need to rotate this a little bit on that Z axis. So let's try something like 239 for that one. And we'll just do it in small increments like this just until we get it right. 237. That's looking better. Pretty close. And then let's just grab that X and drag it backwards just a hair, just to reposition that ever so slightly. And I'm just moving that back, just barely dragging that. And sometimes the adaptive resolution isn't as helpful as you'd like it to be. So if you want to, you can turn that off. It just depends on what you're working on if you care to have a fast preview like that. So I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. It looks like I have quite a bit of room between the bottom of this table and the interface, so that's great compared to where the phone is. We may need to scale some of this up just a little bit just to get his finger kind of interacting with some of these things better, but we know that we have the placement of the phone right. So this is our anchor, and then we can move some of these other pieces around just depending on how we need that to lay just to look right. So in this lesson, we were able to manipulate the position and orientation of our main interface layer to place it on the table and make it feel like the degree that it's been rotated to matches that of the table, which is kind of at an angle in our shot.